Welcome to Learning Photography with Duck. Here's your host, Duck.
Hey, happy Valentine's Day. I want to thank you guys for joining me on Valentine's Day. I don't know if you had any plans to be with your significant other. I know Bonnie is taking time out of her vacation down in Puerto Rico to be with us, so I really appreciate that. I appreciate you guys spending a couple hours with me today. We got a big session today. And I'm kind of hoping that Carol joins in, because today's session is something that Carol suggested a few months back, and that is how to do a snow overlay, like snowflakes overlay over a winter scene. And in my discussion with her, I said there's two ways of really doing this. And using kind of like a mixture of the two is probably the best way to do it. One is to use a photograph of actual snowflakes and use it as an overlay with layer blends. And the other way is to make a snowflake brush and then use that to kind of create, fake snow. That way you can put the snow wherever you want, or the snowflakes rather, not snow. So I figured today what we'll do is we'll go into both using an overlay to create that snow effect, and then I'll walk you through how to create a brush, right? Because what you learned today with creating the snowflake brush, you can use to create, whatever type of brush that you want. I know in the past I've mentioned that I have certain brushes that I use that I made myself that I really love, because they were made with a very specific purpose. And just like our discussion with presets the other day. Hey, Brian's here. Hey, Brian. Just like our discussion with presets the other day, the presets in Lightroom, if you don't make them yourself, if you source them and download them from the internet, oftentimes what happens is when you start using them, you have to go through this long period of discovery of how that tool, or not how, but what that tool was made to do. So in the example of the presets, oftentimes a preset is designed to solve a particular problem, whether it's a exposure problem, or it's a color problem, or something for dodging and burning, whatever it is. And oftentimes we'll download a preset and we'll click on it. Do me a favor, Lihia. Just mute yourself for a second. Thanks. All right. So that way, you download the preset and you click on it, and then you look at what it does. And oftentimes it runs into frustration because what you think it's supposed to be doing is not really doing it. Or worse still, it's messing up something else that you had done previously. And that's because you don't know why that particular preset was made. So while I do have a love-hate relationship with presets, I said, go ahead, download them, play with them, because it can open up avenues for your creative thinking. But when it actually comes down to making a tool that is going to be useful for you, start from scratch, build it for a particular purpose. That way you know exactly what's under the hood, you know exactly how and when to use that particular preset. All right. And the same thing is going to go with anything that you make as a tool in Photoshop. And we're going to create a brush that is specific for one purpose. Okay. All right. So even though we're going to make a very specific brush, just understand that the process of making brushes is going to be the same no matter what kind of brush you're going to make. Okay. Make sense? All right. Let me go ahead. Thursday, and of course I don't have it up here again. I am dropping the ball once more. Thursday, I'm giving a presentation through Milford Photo. The presentation is the Beyond the Rule of Thirds, where I'm going to go into other forms of compositional rules besides that, standard 3x3 grid that we're all so familiar with. Bill, we discussed this last Monday. So if you don't have anything planned for Thursday, go ahead and go to the Milford Photo Meetup page and go ahead and sign up. It's a free session. It's a Zoom session. It's going to be about 2 hours, roughly about an hour and a half of me rattling off my mouth, and then half hour of you guys being able to ask questions. Okay. All right. What else? There was one other thing I was going to say, and I can't remember what now. All right. Well, anyway. Oh, I remember. Hopefully, today's session is going to be the last session with this outdated computer. I just got notification. Yes, I got notification. All right. Originally, they gave me a delivery date of February 24th. They've updated it. They said that they've already tested it, benchmarked it, and sent it out. They gave me a tracking number, and they were both supposed to go out on the same truck, but somehow in UPS they got separated. My laptop's coming in Wednesday, and my desktop, which is my studio computer, will be here on Thursday. So that means this coming weekend, I will be just trying to get that computer all set up for next Monday's session. I cannot wait. All right. And I'm sure you guys can't wait. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me get my windowed projector here. Where's my share screen? And it's going to go nutsoid for a second. Did it? Okay. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go. That's what I should do. I should change before I switch my scene. Not switch my scene and then start it. Okay. Everybody can see my desktop okay? Yes? Okay, awesome. All right.
Yes.
I picked out 2 images for use today. This one here, there was no snow on the ground, this one, but it was a very cold day, so we have that feel of snow. So what I like to do is kind of give this that first snow look. The second one is a model shoot I did eons ago now, it seems. We shot at this really cool little cemetery over in Ansonia across the river from me. And talk about a beautiful little cemetery. So anyways, I figure we can add some snow into this scene as well. So there's a couple of ways we can do this. All right. And I think what we'll do is we'll start with this image here first. And one of the easiest ways to do it is to just type in, I typed in snow overlay Photoshop. Okay. Snow overlay Photoshop. And it's going to give you a bunch of images, as you can see here, that they are very dark images, and that's what we want. We want white snowflakes on a black background, okay? Because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the power of layer blends in order to hide the black and just keep the white, okay? So the other thing I would suggest you do is look for resources that are free resources, okay? There are plenty of them out there on the internet, all right? And as you can see, the first few images here it is, 260 free snow overlays for Photoshop at Fix the Photo. All right, so what I'm going to do is just look through, and you're going to notice that there's going to be a variety of quality for these overlays, because everybody's going to be making these. Some you can tell that they've actually photographed snow, and others you can kind of tell that, well, they're looking a little bit too perfect. So you can definitely see that that's done more probably with a Photoshop brush. So for example, this one here, it says Google Snow, Photoshop Snow Texture on Pinterest. Okay. This one, they're all perfectly round, varying degrees of opacity, various degrees of size, but they don't quite read as snowflakes, okay? So if you want something with realism, you got to start with a good resource, all right? So this one I probably wouldn't even use, all right? The other thing you want to look for is, depending on the size of your original, you're going to want something that's the image size a little bit on the larger size, all right? So this one, I'm using Google Chrome, so whenever I hover over this image here, down in the corner, it tells me the dimensions of that particular image, which is 900 by 604, which is pretty small for an image coming straight off your camera, okay? However, there is a little bit of leniency here when we upscale it, because we're going to be doing so much to it that we can get away with quite a bit of scaling up without it becoming too noticeable, all right? But what I want to do is I want to look for something that is a little bit more natural, all right? So now this one here, oh, this is small. See, this is 581 by 392. That's tiny. But if you notice, all these shapes are very irregular shapes. So this is more of that kind of like a wet snow feel, all right? This overlay here, oh, this one's even better. This one's 1200 pixels wide. And you can see that there's a variety of shapes and a variety of sizes. So this might be a good one right here. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just right click, and I'm going to say go ahead and copy the image. Come back over to my Photoshop, and I'm going to control paste. All right, and you can see that image wise, in comparison, this is a very tiny resource in relation, but that's okay. I think that we can enlarge this without it getting too crazy, right? So I'm going to select my move tool, and I'm just going to place it up at the top, And I'm just going to go ahead and drag it. All right, and it's already starting to pixelate a little bit. We'll see how far. Yeah.
Did you drag the image or did you copy and paste?
I copied and pasted it.
Did you do Control C and Control V?
Correct. All right, I'm going to go ahead and commit. All right, and you can see here. Let me zoom in a little bit on like this snowflake here. All right, you can see that there is a little bit of pixelation. All right, and normally this is the kind of stuff that we want to avoid. Okay, but because we are going to be using this as an overlay, which is not going to be, it's not going to make this pixelation as noticeable. All right, so in this particular case, like I said, you can get away with quite a lot, you know, before it starts looking really, really terrible. Okay, so now I have that snowflake texture sitting at a layer above my subject. Okay, and now all I have to do is change the layer style. All right, let's see, give me 1 second. One of my tools is not working here. Let me turn it on. Okay, here we go. Where's my spotlight? There we go. All right, we want where it says normal, we're going to change that to something that we can use. Okay, and of course, what we want to do is we want to get rid of the dark part and keep the light part. All right, so we want something that lightens. Okay, so again, these sections are divided. The first part is darken mode, so anything that's darker than the pixels below it will get darkened. That's not what we want. We want to lighten. Okay, and that's our second group, which is our lighten group, and we have quite a few to select from. Okay, and you can see that the first one, lighten, what it's doing is it's taking the very, very, very lightest parts of that overlay and using it, it's basically revealing it. Okay, some of the lighter grays coming into the middle gray are lost. Okay, so we need to go to the second one, which is our screen overlay. The screen overlay gets closer to that middle gray towards the white, and that's what we want. Okay, and of course the dodge, as you can see, especially over her face, it does really weird things with color. So I usually don't use that unless looking to really amplify a particular color. Then we have linear dodge and lighter color. All right, so basically anything that's a lighter color is going to be hidden. All right, so it looks like screen is going to be pretty adequate here. Okay, alternatively, what I would suggest you do is when you work with overlays is also take a look at the overlay and the soft light blend mode. Sometimes these work with certain overlays. In this particular case, because we have so much black in the image, it's not recommended. As you can see, it does really weird things to the underlying color. Okay, so screen is the best one for this. Okay, which is in our lighten group. Okay, and as you can see, now we have a very realistic looking snowstorm happening in front of our model. Okay, and the nice thing about this particular overlay that I picked up is that we get a sense of depth because of the different sizes of snowflakes that are in this shot. Obviously, you know, the further away from the camera, the smaller the snowflakes are going to look. The closer to the camera, the bigger the snowflakes, okay? But we have a problem. We have this nasty, huge snowflake almost obliterating one of her eyes, okay? So we can see right here that, you know, it's hiding too much of her. So what I want to do now is hide some of this texture. Oops, what did I do? I don't know what I did, but that's not what I want to do. Okay. What I want to do is I want to hide some of this texture without really destroying my texture. All right. So, or basically I just want to get that spot off her face. Okay. Now, let me zoom out a little bit. Because I used, let's see. All right, because I used such a large texture, all right. Where's my texture? See, this is what I hate. My computer is just so friggin' slow. That's not what I wanted to do, right?
Hey, Doc,
Yeah.
would you consider flipping the image?
Yeah, you could. All right, actually, you know what? Something went wrong here. Let me delete that and paste it back in. Okay. All right. I'm going to resize it, make it large. All right. Now, because it's so large, all right, and we have extra on the side, we can move that left and right until we have a position where it really doesn't obliterate her. Okay. And yes, you can also flip your textures. Depending on the type of texture that you have, you can flip it left and right or up and down. In this case, there's a lot of the small snowflakes at the top and the not so much at the bottom, so it does tend to have a direction. So any patterns that has a direction, you got to be careful which way you flip. All right. In this case, I would flip horizontally. I won't flip it vertically. Come on, machine, catch up to me. Thursday can't come fast enough. There we go. All right. So now I can, as you can see, I can slide that. I can slide that texture back and forth until I find something that I like. Okay. So we can keep, you know, these large clumps, we can keep those in because I think it adds interest. All right. It definitely gives us a sense of scale. All right. But I might want to put it somewhere where, you know, yeah, right there looks good. I want to put it where it's not going to, you know, really obliterate the face of my model, because as I remove it from the model's face, you know, I'm just going to get rid of it. I kind of like that big blotch. I kind of like this big blotch right in front of her as well. All right. Oops. Okay. So now.
Hey, Doc,
Yes.
can you delete part of the, can you mask it and delete part
Yes,
of
that's what we're going to
the
do
text
next.
around the face?
Unfortunately, my computer is not letting me work fast enough here. Okay, let's see. So we want to write about here. I'm going to create a mask. Okay, and I'm just going to zoom into her. All right, and I'm going to select a soft round brush. This is a standard brush. Okay, and I'm going to make it nice and large. Okay, and you want to make sure that black is your foreground color, because black is going to hide anything on that layer. Okay, so we're going to just tap right on her skin tone there. All right, and basically anywhere I don't want the snowflakes, that's where I am going to paint in black. All right, so I don't want anything to really hide her face. You know, obviously I want her face to be visible. Okay, I should probably scale this whole image down so I'm not working with such a large image, but yeah. All right. Okay, and then as you can see, if I just show you my mask, I'm just painting black onto my mask, and wherever I don't want snow, that's where I'm going to paint. Okay, and just like that, all right, you saw how easy that was. Just like that, I have a snowy scene with my model. Obviously, you have to have the appropriate scene for a snow scene. You know, it helps that there's snow on the ground. And from here on, you can edit your image as you normally would. Okay, so I might say, you know, I want to, you know, enhance her face a little bit. So I'm going to make a curves adjustment. I'm going to give it a little bit of a soft light, overlay, soft light. Yeah. Okay. Control I to invert the mask. Make white my foreground color. All right. There. Give her a little bit of warmth. And quick and dirty. Okay. All right. Any questions on using an overlay? It's fairly simple, right? Now, this is a fairly simple overlay process, because what it's doing is it's using an overlay that already has an extreme contrast between black and white. Depending on, you know, what type of overlay you want, if you want an overlay that just adds a subtle texture, you're going to want something that's a little bit more into the midtones and black. And if you want, I can get a little bit more in depth in creating those type of textures. Let me know. I'm not going to get into it today, simply because I want to show you guys how to build a brush, and that's going to take a little bit of time. But if you're interested in how to create textures, you know, for use in Photoshop, let me know, and I'll do a tutorial on that maybe next month. Okay. But let me know. All right. Any questions on this technique? Any?
No.
All right. Fairly simple.
Once you finish with this image, do you flatten the image, or do you just export as JPEG or TIFF or PDF?
All right. So
PNG, and so that way you don't have to flatten the image, the original.
all right. So this is personal preference. Okay. Different people have different philosophies. Okay. You are looking to do something that's a little bit more commercial, right? I am a commercial photographer. I always have to kind of keep in the back of my head that at any point, a customer is going to come back and say, hey, can you do me a favor? It looks great, but can you change this? Okay. If I flatten an image, I have to start the entire editing process all over again just to change this. If I don't flatten it, if I keep my PSDs with the layers, I can go back into that file, change what they want changed, and then output a new finished product. Okay? So for me, it does not make sense for me to flatten files. Okay? There are times where layers need to be flattened because unfortunately not everything in Photoshop is non-destructive. All right? But I try to avoid those as much as possible. All right? The process of generating an exported file, whether it's JPEG, a TIFF, a PNG, or a GIF, whatever you're kicking out of Photoshop, it's by nature already going to be flattened. So it doesn't make sense for me to flatten my PSD file just to create a flattened export. Make sense? Okay. All right. Again, you have to realize that the quality of the quality of the results is going to be determined by the quality of your assets. All right. And if you are a nature photographer, all right, or if you are a fashion photographer and you want to create these snowy scenes, I really, really highly encourage you to create your own assets. Because one, finding suitable assets, finding suitable assets for your needs that are at the resolution that you need are hard to find. And the ones that are available, everybody and their cousin has already downloaded them. Okay? What is the likelihood of somebody figuring out that this is something that you took off the internet and used? The chances are, nil to zero. Okay? But as you saw, when I expanded it, the quality just wasn't there. Okay? So if you want the quality, create your own assets. It doesn't take much effort to grab a strobe or speed light when it's snowing in the evening and then just pop off, 5, 6, a dozen shots of snow. And keep in mind, different temperatures is going to give you different snow effects. All right. You can have big wet snowflakes like this one when it's, warmer weather. And when it's colder weather, you're going to get more of a crystallized snow. Okay. So have a variety of things available for yourself. Okay. All right. I think I beat this dead horse. All right. So let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and close that. All right. My second scene is one that, I'm going to use just kind of as an experiment to creating our own brush. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to create, I'm going to keep it simple. We're going to create 2 brushes. Okay. We're going to create a brush for like the big snowflakes. And we're going to create a second brush for the smaller snowflakes that are further like in the background. Okay? All right. All brushes that you create in Photoshop are based on a black and white image. Okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new file. All right? File, new. Come on. All right. And you want a minimum 1000 pixels by 1000 pixels. Okay. And I'm going to keep my resolution at 300 because if you do anything for print, you want that resolution. Okay. 8-bit, this doesn't matter. We're going to change our background to black. Change your background to black. We want a black background. Okay. For now. Okay. Okay. Color management, not a big deal. Square pixel, it doesn't matter. We're going to go ahead and create. Okay. And for this one, we're going to use just a basic round brush, soft round brush. Okay. And obviously this is awfully big. I'm going to make my brush size about 50 pixels. Yeah, about 50 pixels. All right. And I want my foreground color to be white. Foreground color to be white. Okay. All right. And what I'm going to do is I am going to just create a couple of dots. All right. About 3 dots. Okay. And you know what? Let me make one at 80 pixels. I'll throw one here and maybe one here and one here. All right. It's looking a little even. Let's get rid of that one. All right. Basically what I'm doing is just looking for a kind of sort of random pattern. All right. We're only dealing with a few dots in a square. So, you know, how can you determine what random is with this, right? But just a little bit of a randomness. All right. Let's go 60 here and we'll make that one 60. Okay. Now, you can see that there are not a lot of dots on here. Okay. And each one of these dots is going to represent a snowflake. But because we're going to be creating a brush that we can apply anywhere we want, we're just basically just going to paint our snow into the scene. Okay. All right. So we have our random pattern. Okay. And it kind of looks like snow. All right. And what I'm going to do is Control-I or Command-I for you Mac people. And I'm just going to invert it. Invert it. Okay. And let's see if I can remember how to do this. Okay. We're going to go to our brushes. Come to our little menu thing, and let's see. See if I can remember how to do this. It's been a while. Edit. Oh, here we go. Edit, define brush preset. Okay. Define brush preset. Okay. Now, there's several steps to creating a brush, all right? The first step is what we're doing here, is we're basically giving Photoshop a file to use for the basis of our brush, all right? In order to create, to lay down any kind of pigment on our canvas, Photoshop needs something to use, all right, to lay down that pigment. Okay, so in this case, we're saying we're going to create these little dots, and anywhere these dots go, that's where the pigment is going to go. Okay, so the first step is just basically giving the brush image into Photoshop. And at this point, it doesn't matter what you call it. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it as sample brush 1, which is the default. Okay, because this is not going to be my final brush. This is just the texture for the brush. All right, hopefully that you understand that. Okay, now as soon as you click on that, you're going to note, let me hide these things. All right, close that. It puts it all the way at the bottom of your brush stack. All right, so I have my brushes panel open. Okay, here, let me do it like this. All right. Come on. All right. Puts it right here at the bottom. Okay. And if you notice, it doesn't look very interesting in the little preview. Okay. So what we're going to, and if you notice also, your brush is going to be visible. It's going to be selected. And as you can see, it kind of lines up with what I have on the screen. All right. So now if I go over to my image, all right, and I paint, okay, it's just going to create this running pattern of lights. Okay, so this obviously does not look anything like falling snow. All right, so let me back that up. Okay, so we need to create some parameters of how this brush is going to operate. So I'm going to go ahead and create a blank layer above it so I'm not destroying my original. All right, and we're going to go to our brush settings. All right, so let me dock this back. We're going to go to our brush settings, and here is where the magic comes into play. All right, what I suggest is, if you are serious about creating your own brushes, spend some time with in this section here. All right, try to figure out what all these things do, because when you have an understanding of that, you can make a brush that behaves in the way that you want. Okay, all right, so the default part is brush tip shape. Okay, and if you notice that there are a series of little icons here, and there's going to be one that's already highlighted. Okay, this 928. All right, 928 is the final size that was exported for my brush. All right, so what happened is when I saved that brush shape, it only saved the black areas. It did not save the white area. All right, so because the black areas did not come all the way to that 1000 pixel square, it's actually a little bit smaller. Okay, so it's 928. Okay, and you can see the pattern that I created. All right, so this represents the as if you were to take an actual brush and look at it right from the end. Right, that's what your brush looks like. okay? And then we have below, we have our spacing, all right? And this is going to be one of the critical things for this particular brush, okay? So what we want to do is, as I draw, okay, you can see that there are spaces in between each iteration of my brush. So basically the way a brush works is it makes a stamp as you're moving. At a certain interval, it's going to make another stamp, and then another stamp, and then another stamp, and so on. Okay? That's how that works. Okay? Now, if I change that spacing to 1%, which is the smallest that it'll go, right? You can see that it says 1%. Now, if I draw, okay, you can see that there are no spaces in between each one of those little stamps, all right? So this is how we can get a brush that draws a line, all right? In this particular case, that's not what we want. We want a lot of space in between each stamp, okay? So how much space? Well, that's going to be determined by you know, your brush size and what the effect is, all right? So these are going to be very small snowflakes. So I want that spacing to be far apart, okay? So now I have it at 74, 75%, okay? You can see now it's starting to look like a random pattern of snow, all right? And of course, the furthest or the most amount of space that you can put is 100%, okay? So now, what does that mean? All right, now remember, we used a square to create this brush, all right? So every time that square moves into its new position, all right, adjacent to the previous square, it's going to stamp again. Then it's going to move the width of that square and stamp again at 100% of that brush width, all right? So, all right. Oh, yeah, I can go more than that. What was I thinking? All right, so here's at 100%, all right? And you can see that we're getting a wider spacing, all right? So we want to find that balance of making it look natural, being able to fill up the space that we want, and taking advantage of our brush, all right? So I think that 75% worked really well. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there, okay? All right, I'm just going to go ahead and delete that layer, create a new blank layer, all right? And that's what it looks like. Okay, but you can see they're still pretty large for it to be our background snow. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and change the size. Let's go with 400, see what that looks like. All right, that's looking a little bit better. Let's go 300. All right, I'll pick a new one here. All right, yeah, see, that's looking a little bit more like, you know, background snow, right? Make sense? Okay. So we have our scattering, all right? And we have our scale, all right? So now we need to work on other elements, all right? Obviously, snow has a variety of opacity, okay? And it also has a variety of shapes. They're not all round, okay? So this is where we start going down our list of preferences on the left-hand side, all right? So we're going to go, next is our shape dynamic, okay? Shape dynamic. And the first one is size jitter. All right, jitter means it's going to randomly generate a variety of whatever it is for that particular brush. All right, so in this case, it's a size jitter. So it's going to randomly create different sizes of our brush, and it's based on the percentage of your brush size. All right, so in this case, we want to have, let's see what 25%, oops, let's select 25% jitter and see what that looks like. Let's get rid of that snow. Okay. And now, as we go, it's probably hard to tell because these are all little dots. All right. But every time it creates one, it's going to be a slightly different size. All right. And 25% is not quite enough. So let's see what 50% looks like. All right. There we go. Now we're seeing a variety of sizes. We can see some really large and some really small. All right. And of course, if we go even bigger, let's pick a fresh section here. All right. We'll be able to see a variety of sizes. There's a little one, big one, even a huge one. And it's just going to give you that variety. All right. Now that little tiny cluster, that's actually probably a little bit too small. So I think 65 is too much. I'm just gonna go with like 40. I think 40 is a good one for this brush. Let's give that a try. Yeah, see, that's giving us a nice random array of sizes. Okay. The angle jitter is the other one that we need to change, because right now, okay, let's see if I can, you know what? Let me get, oops, wrong one. Let me get, I'm going to put a black layer here just for, just so you can see. Okay. All right. I'm going to make a stamp, and then I'm going to make a stamp right next to it. All right. And then one right next to it. And you can see that they're getting smaller, but the orientation of all of these, all right, they're all the same. You can see these three, and these three. Okay. We need to change that. We need to randomize that. All right. So what we want to do is go to our angle jitter. All right. Jitter again means how much of a change. All right. We're going to change our angle jitter. All right. And I start off at a default of 50, because what that's going to do is it's going to rotate it 50% of the design at the max. All right. It's going to be random. All right. So now you can see that these three are going this way, and these three are going this way, and these three are going that way. Slight change between the first two, and a drastic change with the last one. Okay. So this is going to give us a little bit more of a variety of that pattern, so it doesn't look repetitive. Okay. Make sense? All right. And then the last one is roundness. Okay, roundness. All right. And the roundness is literally actually you can kind of see it here. All right. Notice how it's compressing it. All right. What it's doing is it's squishing on one axis our brush. All right. And because it's a jitter, it's going to randomize the size of that squishing. All right, so what that's going to do is it's going to give us some round snowflakes and some oval shaped snowflakes. All right, so this is another way that we can really randomize our look, so it doesn't look like the same brush stamped over and over and over. Okay, all right, there we go. That looks pretty good. All right, let's give that 60%. They're kind of like nice looking numbers. Okay, all right, I'm going to clear my, there we go. The next one down is the scattering. Okay, so now as I brush across, all right, you can see that it's keeping that brush along the path that I just drew. Okay, what scattering does is it takes that brush and offsets it from your path, either up and down or left and right. Okay, and what we want usually is we want that to be on both axes. Okay, and this one is another one that depending on how much of an area you're looking to cover and how much randomization, you're going to want a fairly high number. Just realize though that the more scatter, the less control you have of where your actual brush is going to land. All right, in this particular case, it's probably not that critical because we are adding a very random weather asset to begin with. All right, but if you create a brush where you need a little bit more control, you want to keep this this number under wraps. So let's see what 200 looks like. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a line and I'm going to go across, and you can see how it puts some above the line and some below the line. Okay, let me go ahead and move this down. All right, I'm going to up this to 500. All right, now remember my brush is almost 1,000 pixels wide. All right, so 500% of that. Okay, and now as I draw across, you can really see how random that scattering is. All right, and this is why I warn you, if you want control of where you want it, you don't want to set this too high. All right, so I think in this particular case 300 is probably gonna serve me pretty well. It's going to, let me get a fresh piece here. It's going to allow me to kind of sorta maintain some control, right? With some variations. All right, actually 300 may be a little bit too much. Let's try 200. Move this down. All right, I'll see. Now I'm liking that. That for me is a nice fairly random pattern. Okay, all right. Count jitter. To tell you honestly, I don't even remember what that means. Oh, count is how many iterations of the pattern is going to be created per touch. Okay, every time the Photoshop makes a stamp, all right, how many stamps is it going to create? Okay, if you want to make your job easy in this particular respect, maybe we'll go to a count of 3. So when I tap once, it's going to lay 3 iterations of that stamp. 1, 2, 3. okay? So this allows you to fill up an area without a lot of work, okay? So actually that doesn't look too bad, all right? And the count jitter, obviously, it's going to randomize how many stamps between the 1 and the 3. In this case, it's a low number. I don't think the jitter is needed. But if you put this higher, like at a 10, let's do 10 here, okay? You can see that it puts a lot, but if we increase our jitter to, let's say 50%, all right? See, now it only, oh, there we go. Made a lot, made a fewer less. All right. Oh, that one created quite a few. All right, so you can see that it changes the density because it's putting more or less of that stamp in place. All right. This is a little bit probably too random for me. I'm the type of person that, you know, wants a little bit of control of where I place my elements. So I think that that 3 count with a 0% jitter works quite well. All right. This allows me to, wherever I draw, that's where it's going to put the snow. Okay. Next one is texture. We're not going to do texture in this case, but you can add a particular texture to your brush. So instead of being just black and white, all right, and everywhere that these little white spots are being placed, all right, it will place some kind of texture, okay? It's just another way of really crafting dimension to your piece, all right? Let me move to a blank area, all right? I'm going to go ahead. I have a clouds selected. All right. So let's just make a scale texture tip. We're going to go overlay. Let's see what happens. Okay. Actually, that's not too bad. What it's doing is, let me zoom in. You can see it's creating a texture that is interacting with our shape. So our shapes were originally round, all right? What I did is I gave it that cloud, a generated cloud texture. I set it to overlay blend, and it's interacting with each one of these little white specks, okay? So actually in this particular case, because we are building snow, it works really, really well, right? Okay. Let's go back. Minus. Let's go back to our brush, all right? Dual brush. This one is a little bit more complex, and this is where you can get 2 different brush shapes. So you can have one with a spattering of dots, and you can have one with, let's say, a rectangle. And what it'll do is it'll blend the 2 together, so you create this kind of unique shape, right? Not going to get too crazy into that. I suggest you experiment with it because you really need to be familiar with brushes in order to be able to use that particular tool. All right. Then we go into our color dynamics. Okay. Color dynamics is going to blend your foreground and background color. All right. Foreground and background color. All right. So in this case, we have white as our foreground color and black as our background color, okay? Because it's snow, I want that snow to be white. I don't want to be painting black snow. So I don't want this to apply any kind of background color to my whatchamacallit, to my brush. Okay, definitely not. Okay, transfer is the one that we are going to apply, and this is our opacity jitter, opacity. All right, so right now by default it's going to put 100% pigment at each one of those spots. So each one of those spots gets 100% of white. Okay, but as we saw with our previous textured overlay, sometimes depending on how a snowflake catches a light, they can seem pretty translucent. All right, so in order to get a sense of translucency, we want some of that opacity to diminish. All right, we want some transparency to our brush. Okay, so how much transparency? Well, let's start off at 50%. All right, so if we have 100% white being applied, with this opacity jitter applied, we can get a maximum of a 50% transparent white brush. Okay, and we can determine whether we want the pen to control. I'm using, a Wacom pen. We can determine if we want the pen to determine the opacity. All right, and this is where that pressure sensitivity for opacity comes into play. When you're using a pen, if you want a very opaque look, you're going to press hard. If you want a very transparent look, you're going to press very lightly on your pen in order to create that. In this case, I want it off. All right, I want it to basically just let the program determine my opacity. All right, and now you can see, let me pick a clean section here. All right, as I brush across, you can see that some are a light gray while some are nice and bright white. Okay, so this helps add to that sense of depth. Okay, and that pretty much looks like falling snow. All right, so I suggest looking at these other ones. Brush pose works with tablets. If you tilt your pen, you can change the angle of your brush. Okay, I don't have that feature. Right, you can add noise. Wet edges is how the pigment that you're applying interacts with the existing pigment along the edges of your brush. All right, so you can actually pick up, make it look like it's picking up some of that background color. We don't want that here, so we're going to keep our wet edges off. Okay, build up and smoothening. Smoothening is just for your pen stroke. It's probably not needed here, but I often keep this on by default. Okay, and then protect textures. We're not, that doesn't mean anything here, so we're gonna go okay. All right, let me zoom out. Let me get rid of these. All right, so now I can go ahead and apply my brush, and you can see that it does a nice random scattering of really like our background far in the distance snowflakes. Okay, do you have any questions so far? I know we covered quite a bit here. Anything? No?
Now, I'm guessing that once you transfer this brush into the image is when we can apply the overlay opacity. can increase opacity or
Yes.
diminish
Yes.
opacity.
All right. So actually, let me remove this. Okay. So now I can go ahead and I can apply these background snowflakes, all right, to my image. Okay. So I can say, I want, probably in these areas that look like it's really receding into the backwoods here, this big open space. So I'm probably going to go a little bit heavier with this brush here just to create those really distant snowflakes, all right? And of course, once you have your brush built, you can alter the size of your brush, all right? I haven't baked these in yet, so I'm not going to do anything just yet, all right? But you can see how fairly natural that looks for background. If you say, well, you know what? It's still looking a little bit too bright. We can always come in and reduce the opacity of our layer in order to really push them, make those recede a lot further. Now, the reason I suggest having a brush available is because, as you saw when I did it with the texture overlay, you can't really create depth with that texture overlay. That sense of depth is already baked into that overlay, okay? You can use the brush in addition to an overlay, or you can just use the brush by itself, all right? And then in that case, if you need a little bit more here, you just paint it in. If you need a little bit more there, you just paint it in, okay? All right, so now...
Doug, once you create a brush, it automatically saves it into your brush collection?
No. We haven't saved this yet.
Automatic thing, or do you have to save it?
We have to save it, all right? So right now we're still building it. And part of building it is, using it, tweak it, use it, see if it gets to the effect that you want, tweak it a little bit more. Once you're happy with it, then we want to go ahead and save it. So, I'm pretty happy with the way this brush is looking, okay? It gives me a very natural looking distant snowflakes, right? All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come back over to our brush settings, okay? And we're going to, let's see, brushes. All right. We're going to go to our little hamburger menu. I'm in my brushes, all right? And just like we did last time, we are going to new brush preset, okay? Before I click on that, I want to show you. Let me zoom in here. See this? Notice how this does not look anything like our brush, all right? If we go to our brush settings, if we look down at the bottom, all right, all the way at the bottom, this is what our brush looks like, our current brush. See that nice scattering? All right. This is a preview down here of what your brush looks like. If we go over to our brushes, that doesn't match at all what we're seeing here. But this is what we started off with, all right? So what we need to do now is we need to take what we just built and create a new brush, all right? So we're going to go to our little menu icon, new brush set, preset, new brush preset, okay? And at this point, you want to give it a name that means something to you, all right? So I'm going to back out for a second, all right? I have a brush set right here called Duck's Brushes. All right. And this is where I keep the brushes that I use on a regular basis. All right. And then below that, I have brushes that I've sourced from different places that once in a while I'll experiment with. All right. But if we go to Duck's Brushes, these are brushes that I have made. Or they are, actually, I think all of these are brushes that I've made. All right. Or if you come across a brush that you just fall in love with and you instinctively know how to use it because it's getting you the effect that you wanted, all right, or you understand what the purpose of the brush was, go ahead and move it into your own little folder, all right? To create your own set of brushes, you just come up to the menu and you create a new brush group, and that's going to create a folder, all right? But what I want you to do is take a look at my naming convention, all right? Now, the first 6 brushes are generic. They're pretty much what comes with Photoshop, all right? Everybody has these brushes, the soft round, the hard round, the soft pressure round, the hard pressure round, and the soft round pressure with opacity, because again, I'm using a Wacom pen. I have access to be able to control the opacity, right? And then a hard one, okay? So what I did is I just moved those from the general Photoshop folder into mine, just so that they're always right here. I don't have to look for them. But the ones below it, you're gonna see that the majority of these, they have a very specific way of being named, okay? The second 2, all right, you can see that I have it pencil, soft graphite black, and the pencil and the black are in caps, all right? And then right next to it, I have pencil, soft graphite blue, all right? These are very specific brushes that I created that mimic exactly what they're named for. A soft black graphite pencil and a soft blue graphite pencil, all right? Because, like I said, I sometimes do illustration work with Photoshop, and me coming from an analog way of working, I'm very used to grabbing my blue pencil to do my underlying sketch, and then once I have a rough composition, I'll grab a regular graphite pencil and modify that. All right, so these 2 brushes work in conjunction to the way I normally work in an analog format. All right, but more importantly, the name themselves gives me all the information I need about what that brush is, what it's for, and in this particular case, that it's got colors locked into it, okay? For our snowflake one, we really don't have a color locked into it, okay? We can lock the color white, but sometimes we don't want to use white. Sometimes we might want to use a warm off-white, okay? So I'm not going to log that in, all right? I have one that says color, soft blend. I have my stipple brushes, all right? And this is kind of sort of what we're going to go with, all right? So stipple is basically just taking your pen and creating dots, all right? I'm doing this to the paper, all right? So these brushes mimic that. And whether it's a very light stipple or a very heavy, lots of dots being applied, all right? I made 3 different brushes: light, medium, dark and extra dark. Oh, I have 4 of them, okay? And you can see that the preview represents those brushes, okay? So we're gonna do something very similar to this. We're gonna create 2 snow brushes. We're gonna create a distance and a close-up, okay? Everybody follow my naming convention? All right, you don't have to follow how I name things. Name it the way it makes sense to you, all right? All right, so here we are, brushes. Go to our menu, new brush preset, and I'm going to call it snow, all right? And I'm gonna capitalize that because this lets me know exactly what this brush is for. This is my snow brush, all right? And I'm gonna call it distance, or distant, let's call it distant snow, okay? So, and you know what, I'm gonna make that lowercase, snow, distant snow. And then we have a few options, a few decisions to make here, okay? The first option is, do we want to have the size of our brush baked into this brush preset, all right? So if you notice, one of the first things that we did was play around with, you know, how big or how small should we make this brush, and I settled on 300 pixels because it gives us a nice distant look, okay? So I can say to myself, in this particular case, because I want to automatically start with that 300 pixel, I want to bake it in, all right? So every time you select this brush, no matter what previous brush size you were at, it's going to default to 300 pixels. If you need it at a different size, you have to manually change it. That's the only drawback to this, all right? So you have to say to yourself, okay, do I want to constantly be changing the size every time I pick this brush, or am I okay with it? All right. Understanding the way you're going to use a brush is going to help you answer this question. All right. So most often, I'm probably going to be using this in a landscape, and I've already built it to work with a landscape. So in this particular case, I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to bake it in because this is an awesome default size to work with. So if this is great default size for this type of image, all right, in the event I'm working on something different, I know I have the option of making it larger, okay? But I kind of like the fact that I can default it to this size, to the size that I built it for. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay. All right. The next one, include tool settings. Tool settings. And that's everything that we did previously. Okay. So we want that. All right. I want to include all my tool settings. Okay. And then the last one is, do you want to include the color? All right. In this case, I don't. I want to be able to pick what, you know, if I want red snowflakes, I can do that. If I want green snowflakes, I can do that. So in this particular case, I know I'm going to be building 2 different snow brushes. If I switch between one and the other, whatever color I have picked for my foreground color, if I choose, let's say I decide I want to go with a warm, you know, a warm off-white. Every time I select, you know, I switch between one brush and the other, I don't want to have to reset that color if it defaults to white all the time. All right. So in this particular case, I don't want the color saved. All right. So I'm going to make sure that that is not included. All right. Once you're happy with everything, you hit OK. And now we go to the bottom of our stack. And now there's our original that we called, sample brush 1, the default. And there is our new one, snow, distant snow. And you can see the difference between the two. All right. Okay. Now, obviously, this is not where I want it. I want to bring it up into my folder. So I'm just going to click and drag. And that brings it right up to my duck's brushes. All right. And there it is. Okay. Now, at this point, you can ask yourself, okay, do I want to build another variation of this using the brush profile? All right. This one here, the sample brush. Okay. Do I want to build another one? You might say, you know what? I built one for the distance. Maybe I'll use the same brush to build a medium. All right. And give it a wider scattering and give it a little bit more of opacity. That's entirely up to you. All right. At that point, you just repeat this whole process and give it the new parameters. Make sense? Okay. For this session, I'm not going to bother with it, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. All right, I don't need it, so you can just right-click and delete brush. Okay, it's going to ask you if you really want to delete it, and I'm going to say okay. All right. Any questions so far? All right, we're going to do this one more time. I'm probably going to go a little bit faster. All right. If anywhere along this process you have a question, just shout it out, okay? All right. Let me get my black background. Oh, no. Let's go back to this one here, okay? We can get rid of, there we go, okay. Notice how my default brush is still there, all right? Because that's the one that I just clicked to delete, okay? I'm going to come back over to my hard round. All right. Cancel. Come on. All right. Now, we have to make some decisions. Okay. For our foreground snowflakes, can we get away with using a round brush? All right. Well, if you paid attention to the overlay, we noticed that the large snowflakes in the front, and I should not have closed that file, but I did, sorry. They were very irregularly shaped. All right. So what we can do is we can take our brush. All right, I need to make black my foreground color. And if I want to, I can go ahead and make a fairly irregular shape. Okay. The other thing is I can probably blend the edges a little bit more. So I'm going to give it a little bit of blur. All right, so Gaussian blur. All right. Okay. All right, because remember, as it gets closer to the camera, it's not going to be these nice, crisp, clean edges of our snowflake. All right. And the other thing is maybe I'm going to want to take up a little bit more space. All right. On our, we're going to use one, and we're going to see what that looks like. Okay. If it doesn't look right, we'll try something else. Okay. All right, so we have our snowflake, and you know what? I might just add a little bit more texture here. Right, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to white as my foreground color. All right, and I'm going to bring the opacity down to about 25%. Oh, let's go with a soft round, really soft round. And I'm just going to make a few little dots here just to kind of break that up. All right, maybe not so light. Okay. All right, just to give it a little bit of texture. All right. At this point, I'm just experimenting. All right. I'm trying to kind of guess as to what kind of shape makes a snowflake, out of focus snowflake. Okay. So this looks pretty good to me. I'm going to go ahead and in my brushes, I'm going to go to my menu. All right. And I'm going to create. Oh, wait a minute. Where was I? Oh. Let's see. Where is it? Okay. Why? What's going on? Come on. There we go. What's going on here? Brush. Oh, I know why. I have to have my brush selected. There we go. I had the move selected because I moved it and scaled it. You gotta have your brush selected. Okay, make sure you're in your brush. All right. Now we go brush, new brush preset. Okay. And again, at this point, I don't care about the name. All right. I'm gonna leave it at the default. Okay. And I'm gonna say okay. And it puts it right here because I was already in my folder. Okay, let's bring that down out of here. Okay, so we have our soft round. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Nope, I grabbed the wrong one. Oh, I know what I did. See, this is where you kind of gotta pay attention. You delete brush. Okay. Give me 1 second. Can't remember what I did. Oh, for Christ's sakes here. What is going on? Brushes. New brush. Let me select all. Brush. Okay, I am stuck. What is going on? It's not letting me create my brush set again. Brush, new brush preset. That's not what I want. Oh, for God's sakes. Okay, I am stuck. Why is it not? It's not letting me. It's not letting me do what I want. New brush preset. That's not what I want. New brush, there we go. What the hell? I just had it. All right. If at first you don't succeed, try again. File, new, 1000, 300, black. We'll make it white. Nice blob here. We'll create all right. File, new brush preset. Oh, for God's sakes. New brush preset. All right, you saw that it was just lit up. It was just lit up. Now for some reason layer from background. Why not? Let's give it a try. All right. It's not letting me do it again. I think my computer has run out of oomph. And I have no clue let's give it a try. Yeah. It's not letting me do it.
Excuse me, sir. You have a Facebook message.
I have no answer for you guys. I have no clue what is going on now. All of a sudden, it's not.
Excuse me, sir. You have a Facebook message.
You can set up homework for that.
I'm sorry?
We can figure it out. You can set up homework for it and see if we can figure it out.
Yeah, that's, you know, I have a feeling it's got something to do with my computer. Because I know I've been really pushing it lately. So you saw me do this. I made a brush, so it can be done. Now all of a sudden it's not letting me make a brush. File. See, there it is. There it is. But that's not what we want. That's not the one we want. Okay, we want this. And it's not letting me do it.
That's so weird.
That is bizarre. Bizarre. All right. I don't know what to say. That's got me stumped. It's got me stumped. But, well,
Now,
anyway.
question.
Yes.
Question now.
Oops.
Can you set up a brush based from another brush?
Yes.
just changing the settings and then create a new one from a prior one?
Yes. So you can take.
Suppose that we already created the snowflakes.
Yeah.
And
So
you want something similar but maybe bigger.
Yep. So.
Just modify the settings.
Yeah. So what you want to do is you want to look at here. Let me go ahead and delete this. All right. If we go to where it says brush settings, these little squares that you see here, these are all a variety of profiles or shapes. Okay. So here's this one here. All right. Let's take that one. All right. And let's make it big. Okay. All right. Make sure that white is my foreground color, and I'm just going to see every time I stamp. There we go. All right. This one's generating a pattern. Okay. But if we look at all these different shapes, and you say, oh, well, you know, I kind of like this one particular shape. All right. So we'll just use this one for now. Okay. What we can do is we can turn everything off. Okay. Let me clear this. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and maximize it to 5,000 pixels. All right. Enter. All right. And actually, let me go to this one. Oops. Let's go to 1,000 pixels because we have 1,000 pixel canvas. Oops, that's 100. That's 1,000. All right, so there's our blob. Okay. So if we like that particular shape and we want to reuse it and create something new, all we got to do is pick the whatever shape that you want, and then at that point we can come in and go through the entire process. All right, so let's go 200% spacing. I want the size. Previously we went with 300. All right, I think in this case maybe I want a little bit larger, so maybe 400. Okay, and then we just go down. Shape dynamic. Let me go ahead and all right, shape dynamic we want shape dynamic we want size jitter to be at 100%. That worked good last time. Every time we make a stamp, it's going to make different sizes, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Minimum diameter. All right. Minimum diameter is what's the smallest size that you want to make. Okay. So you're not going to get some that are like ridiculously tiny. Okay. All right. Angle jitter, again, I like that 50% because it's going to give you a good randomization. If you have something that has direction, you know, like this one has a kind of like a flat side, you might want to go up to 100. All right. Because then you know that it's going to give you, like in this case, all right, this one and this one are almost 180 degrees. from each other, okay? So that's a good 100% rotation, okay? All right, then the angle jitter, yep, size jitter, scattering. All right, we want it scattered on both axes, okay? In this particular case, I'll probably want a very large scatter, all right? Because again, they're going to be closer to the screen, all right? All right, so these are looking a little bit too tight of. All right, so let's go with a spacing of, let's go with spacing 600. All right. Yeah, there we go. Shape dynamics, size, angle. All right, scattering. Let's go with 700%. Okay. And we want it to scatter on both axes. All right, so not just one. Okay. The count jitter, I think I'm going to keep it to a single. All right. This one, I don't want it creating, you know, multiple instances every time I touch the whatchamacallit, the page. All right. Oh, let me bring my opacity up. There we go. Texture, I kind of liked that texture that we had. All right, so let's scale it down to 50%. Okay. Oh. And I lost my texture. Let's see, water, we'll go with water. Texture each tip, overlay. It's not really doing much because I don't have any kind of feathering on this particular brush. It's fairly a fairly hard edge brush. So this isn't the best brush for this, okay? Transfer, this is where we want, you know, a lot of opacity. All right, so every time, all right, maybe not 50%, let's go with 20%. Okay. All right. Flow, 50%, that's good. Okay. Wet edges. All right, let's see what wet edges does for this particular brush. Not much. All right, but if we zoom in, all right, you can see how the texture is very light. If we had a lot of blur along these edges, we would see more of an influence on our edge with that that texture. All right, actually, let's go back to our texture and let's go with color dodge. Let's see what that gives us. Doesn't give us much. Multiply. Oh, yeah, multiply. Whoa, that's giving us a lot of texture. You can see that texture coming through. All right. So here's where, you know, you can probably play around with this. All right. That's not giving us anything. All right. I think the overlay is probably the best for now. But play around with these. All right. Obviously, this is not good for making a snowflake. All right. But to answer your question, yes, you can reuse. Existing brushes. So, for example, if you say, well, you know, I kind of like this one. It has a very tight scatter, but I want one with a little bit more scatter, then at that point, all you got to do is just adjust one little thing to give you that more distant scatter, and you have a new brush, all right? And it's really upsetting me to figure out why this is rough. I don't know why. All right, this is all right. So this is a brush that I made for, you know, giving me nice soft blended edges. Okay. You can see how it's rotating every time I tap. Okay. All right, and like say, new brush preset. Yeah, see, it's not letting me. File, image. Oh, there it is. That's what I did wrong. Ugh, I'm such an idiot. I am such an idiot. Step number 1, define your brush. Ah, I feel like such an idiot. Step number 1, define your brush. All right, there's my brush. That's what it was. All right, okay. Define my brush. Sample brush number 1.
So to save it as a new brush, we go to File, define new brush.
Yeah.
We get a name, and then we save it.
Yeah. Edit, define brush. Yeah, define brush. I knew something was wrong. I thought it was my computer misbehaving, but no, that was me. I take full responsibility. All right, and then now once you have, oh, wait a minute, I got to invert it. All right, now it's a brush, because remember it's the black areas. So let me get rid of this. Edit, define brush preset. I'm going to accept whatever the default, there it is. There's my brush. Okay, now I can flip over to here, clear this. Come on, clear. There we go. Okay. And now I'm going to go, let's see, what was it, 500? No, that's too big. 300, that's kind of still too big. Let's go 200. All right, opacity, flow at 100, there we go. All right, that's looking a little better. Shape dynamics, size, jitter. Oh, wait a minute, no, before we get there, we got to come down here. Spacing, I want a lot of space in between, so maybe 300% spacing. Yeah, maybe more. Okay, let's go with 100 pixels and 500 on the spacing. There we go. Okay. Shape dynamics, size, let's go 50. Minimum diameter, 10%. Okay. Angle jitter, we definitely want to, about 50%, right? There we go. Scattering, we want the scattering on both axes, and we want a lot of scatter. All right, let's go with more scatter. Let's go with 800%. Let's, oops, 800%. Yeah, there we go. All right, and we're going to keep the count at 1. we're gonna add my texture to it. All right, and we want the texture to be overlay. Yeah, there we go. Color dynamics, nope, we don't want that. Transfer, we want our opacity. Let's keep it at 20%. Okay, flow. The flow jitter is, you know, how much pigment gets put down in one time. Okay, I want to keep that at 50% as well. All right, and we're gonna turn all that off, and that's it. That's all we need. Okay, let's get rid of this. All right, and let's see what this brush looks like. All right, what do you think? I think it needs more spacing. So more spacing. Let's go. What's that? Let's go with 1,000. There we go. And our scattering, we'll bring that up to 1,000 too. Okay. All right. Let's get rid of that. We'll turn this off. All right, and we have, there we go. We have some nice big flakes happening here. Okay. And maybe put a few extra on the edges there. Okay. That looks pretty natural for now, right? Okay, we're gonna go back to our brushes, and I'm going to go ahead and save this as a new preset, all right? And this is going to be snow close up. Okay. And there it is. Let's drag that up into here. All right, we have our snow close up, and we have our snow in the distance. Okay.
Hey, Doug, question.
Yeah.
Once we have the snow on the image, if I don't like, if it's too intense, can we soften?
Yep.
The,
So to use this, I suggest. Let me get rid of this. Create several blank layers, okay? And you're gonna call what distant, middle, all right, and come on. Come on. Really? See, I really, here we go. Close up. Okay. So now we have our, I'm going to start with the distance. All right. And I'm just going to go ahead and put some in here. All right. And what I'm doing now that I have my brushes built, I can, I don't have to worry about, you know, how they look. I got them looking kind of sort of the way I want. Now I can concentrate on, you know, where do I want to put my snow? All right. So I know down in this area, which allows us to see the furthest back into our scene, I'm going to want to kind of build this up to resemble really distant snow flakes. Okay. So I'm going to take my distant snow on my distant, whatchamacallit, layer, right? And I'm going to really just not overly saturate the area with a lot of snowflake, okay? But just to give it that sense of density that happens in the distance, all right? Now, obviously, the further the snow is, the less bright it becomes, all right? So this is where you can play around with the color of your brush that you choose, all right? But I usually find that in this particular situation, using opacity works better simply because the way light bends around snowflakes and picks up the background color through the snowflake. So to replicate that, I want to use the opacity slider to give those distant. See, now they I reduced the opacity. All right. Let's go 40%. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. And now we have, I can really go ahead and really add some density to that back without it killing the scene. Okay. So now we have our furthest ones back. Okay. And my brush size is at the default 300 pixels. So now I'm going to change my brush size to 500 pixels. Okay. So I made my brush bigger. I'm going to go to my middle layer. And now for the middle layer, okay, we have not only the area here, which is our far, okay, but we also have the area here, okay, and maybe these trees as well, okay. So literally everything from this line here up here can be covered with our middle ground, okay, because that's pretty much what represents our middle ground. All right, and I just big sweep, all right, and there we go. Just like that, we have a pretty decent looking coverage, okay. All right. And again, we can play around with the opacity if we find that it's too bright for our scene. Maybe I'll go with 80%. Okay. Turn it off, turn it on. All right. That looks pretty good. Okay. And then all we got to do is go up to a close-up. All right. So let's do a combination. I'm going to do a close-up in 2 layers. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer. Oops. Oh yeah, can't duplicate. Let me make another one and call it close-up 2. Okay. So I close up. I'm going to bring my brush size up to 1,000. Okay. And I'm just going to tap. I'm not going to brush. I'm just going to tap. All right. Oops, I just destroyed myself here. All right, 1,000. I'm just gonna tap different. There we go. Tap, 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 tap. All right, because I don't want to lay down a heavy blanket of really larger snowflakes. All right, I just want to give it a little bit of weight. Okay, and I'm gonna probably go a little bit heavier in this area here because we haven't applied anything. Okay, and if I want to, I can go ahead and just play around with the different sizes. All right, so I'll go to 800, add a little bit here. Okay. And now it's looking a little bit better. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and get my snow close up. All right, go to my topmost layer. And at this point, I can just literally tap wherever I want. Okay, and we're at 100. So maybe I'll do a couple at 50. All right. And at this point, you're kind of selective as to where you're going to put these. Okay. All right. And maybe at 150, let's see. Oops. 150, not 1500. All right. And at this point, you know, maybe just a few random large ones. All right. Just so it makes it look like they're, you know, really up close. Okay. All right. And at any point, if you say, oh, I don't like that one, you could always go to your eraser tool. All right. And because these are individual ones, you can just erase these little individual ones that you don't like. Okay. All right. Because I did not make the proper snowflake, I don't think, I can also go ahead and soften those up even more. If you find that they're a little bit too heavy, you can go Gaussian blur and give them a little bit more of a blur. Anywhere from 2 to 4 is good. All right. And there you go. You have yourself a nice snow scene. Okay. Any questions?
Very good. Very, very good.
All right, and now we can take that, put it into a group, call it snowfall. All right, and you can turn the snow on and off, just like that. Okay. I apologize for my little mental fart there at the beginning of that second brush. Like I said, I don't make brushes all that often, so I'm a little rusty, as very evident. But step 1, define your brush. Step 2, give your brush its habits, and then save it. Save it as a preset.
Question.
Yes.
Now that you created a group, can you set up the group of snow as a new preset?
Yes. Yes.
Just such thing as a layer preset? No brush preset, but layer preset.
A layer?
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Here you go. Yes. All right. So here we go. We're going to create a solid color adjustment layer. We're going to give it a black. Make sure that it's underneath our snow. Okay. And now, because it's isolated, I can say, okay, well, here in the middle, we need a little bit more here. We need a little bit more here. All right. Let's bring our brush size to 500. We'll paint in here a little bit here. Okay. We'll go up to, what was it, 800, I think we did a couple. All right. Tap, 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 tap. Okay. We did one at 1,000, right? Tap, tap, tap. All right, just to make this a little bit more even looking. Okay. And you say, okay, that looks pretty good. All right. And at that point, you save it as a JPEG and you have yourself a snowfield. Very good. You know what? I'm glad one of us is thinking. But yes, you absolutely can. All right.
Yeah, because once you set up on this and you do a group, then you can put it all together. And then the following time, you just start it.
Yeah. All right. But this is going back to what I said earlier about when you use an overlay, you use the same overlay for different images, you're going to get that same snow effect. All right. By having a custom brush, you can customize the snow effect to the image. So like, for example, this is actually a great example. With the truck, I had that empty space in front of the truck that I needed to populate with more dense snow than where the truck was. All right. And you notice that when I took the truck out and put the black background in to create an overlay, I had to go back in and fill those areas in. Now, let's say this is my new overlay and I now want to use it on that truck. Okay. I apply my overlay, and now you could say, you can see how much denser that snow is in front of the truck. So now I gotta say to myself, okay, I have way too much snow covering my subject. I want my subject to stand forward a little bit more. Now I gotta go ahead and create a mask. All right, get a nice soft round brush. Okay, black as my foreground color, and I have to now tone down those snowflakes. All right, because the one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to go in and try to erase individual snowflakes. It doesn't make any sense, right? So for an overlay, I'm going to use something like a large brush to go in and try to knock down that overlay. When you're building the snow on layers, you're putting the snow where you want it. And if you don't want it over your subject, you simply don't paint over your subject. All right. So that's the benefit of a brush over an overlay. Okay. All right. But it's a good point. All right. So quick and dirty. Yes, you can make overlays. All right. Any other questions? Hopefully you guys got something out of it, even though I flubbed it a little bit there.
Good thing you taped it, now I can go over it again.
Yeah. All right. It is a lot to take in. But once you build a couple, and like I said, take time and really study those settings for your brushes, because there's some really cool things that you can do with brushes. Okay. This one here, my soft blend, my color soft blend. Okay. I built this specifically for illustration. Okay. Let's see. Let me bring this size down. All right, because I can really build up tones nice and softly. All right, with this brush. All right, and it gives me a very soft edge. Okay. So whenever I needed any kind of soft, smooth edges, this is my go-to brush. Okay. A side effect that I discovered later on is that this is an awesome dodge and burn brush for doing dodging and burning, which I tend to do a lot in like portraits. It's an awesome one because it gives me a very soft transition with my dodging and burning. So it makes it look a little bit more natural than a soft round brush. All right. So I tend to use this not just for illustration work, but I also use it with portrait retouching. That's my go-to brush for dodging and burning. Okay. So one of these days, I should do a more in-depth dodge and burn session with Photoshop, and maybe we'll build this brush for you. Okay. All right. Oops.
This is very good, Doc. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. And of course, I have because I use a pen, I can control the opacity with my pen. I can make it very, very light or very, very dark. Right? Oh, this is what that wet edge does. See that right in here? That's what a wet edge does on the brush preset. Brush wet edge. Okay. All right, folks. It was a pleasure. Thank you once again for hanging out with me. Next week is going to be our Q&A. So if you have any questions, whether it's on editing, on your camera, on lighting, whatever it is, just hit me up. If you are attending Thursday session and, after the Thursday session, you say, hey, I got a question, hit me up on Monday. I'll be more than happy to talk about any of the composition rules that I discuss on Thursday, okay?
Good.
Have yourself a great evening.
Thank you, Doc.
We'll catch you on the rebound.
Thank you, Doc.
All righty, dear.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
All right. And what the hell? There we go.
Thanks for learning this. Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.